Shall we get started?
Members,
Should we get started?
members,
This one won't even be that.
Jerry?
This one.
we're recording.
Okay. It's been brought to my attention that it's time to call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Chairman Garay,
Pardon?
Chairman Garay,
Oh, yes, that's me, I'm here.
Member Carey,
Here?
Member Hutchins,
Here.
Member Kaczynski,
Here.
Vice Chair Marsh.
Here.
Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag Okay. Any commissioner comments?
Yeah, I'd like to just, over the last, I would say, 4 or 5 months, I've been approached by various residents about the status of that, what I've dubbed the parking garage at the end of Hudson. And over the weekend, at a few gatherings, I had at least a half a dozen people corner me and ask the same question. So if it's okay, Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask Wayne to give us an update, because I think it's going to be a major issue if we don't.
Excellent
Address
idea.
it.
I appreciate that, because I too have been deluged with questions about that.
Good morning, gentlemen, ladies. The status of that property is currently in code enforcement. They've been given a compliance date for by the next hearing in January to come into the site management portion that's been cited in code enforcement. Unfortunately, they are progressing and very slowly. However, as long as they've maintained building permit status, which is very minimal, if I can use that word, but they are, that's basically all we can do at this point. It's really a question of due process. And if they don't come into compliance, then daily fines begin in January. But that's where they are currently standing as far as that property goes. We've got other properties which is also in code enforcement. If I just can elaborate a little bit further, which is 6009. That one is running daily fines at the present time, and it's been declared unsafe. And then we'll have to go through the due process of the unsafe structure component.
Thank you. Brian, if you could help here. I mean, it seems, given what Wayne just said, is that this is just kind of a, ongoing issue. There's no real effort on the part of the owner to respond, obviously, to the fines or the progress of the house. And I'm just generalizing, obviously. I know I'm most likely stepping way over, but I'm more concerned that we are not stuck. That building is built like a fortress. It's almost 80% poured concrete. So it's not something that can be demoed very easily. I mean, we're stuck with that. It's either it's finished as intended, or my question is, what's the consequence? Can the town, I don't know if we have an ordinance. I mean, obviously it's very weak at the moment if you can just tag on inspections indefinitely. Is this something we need to take up with the commission? I mean, I'm sure you've seen it in Delray or other towns. But I think we need to start addressing something here.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I know some time ago we'd kind of talked about it, but then it kind of seemed like the owner re-engaged and started doing some work on it. So, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the fines that are on the property now are related to more of the site work of that type of nature, and I guess if they clean that up, then they would be in compliance. But as far as the amount of time that they have to do something, we would have to take a look at that again, because the way that it was approved and I'm going back, I don't know how many years, but there was something in there, because normally there's a certain period of time when I think buildings have to be done, is that correct?
Yeah.
Or not really, or there was, I know we had talked about it before. And, yeah, I'm not, I know I'd looked at it probably 6 months ago, and I can't really recollect all the ins and outs of the things that we can do that, but we can look at that again, and probably at your next meeting, come back with a more thorough report, I guess, on this is where we're at on this.
Yeah, I think I'm just requesting, I let the other board members speak, but we get a little bit proactive, because if we don't do something, it's just going to be there for eternity. And as an abandoned project, and I think nobody in the town, I'm sure, wants to live through that.
And in that regard, should we take a look at what we require in the way of monthly work to keep a building permit alive? Or are you satisfied that, notwithstanding that one exception, we're okay?
The thing is, from a building standpoint, we're governed by statute. However, from a zoning standpoint, there are certain components that can be, as a timeline expectation to be done by. For example, they needed to have, once you've started construction, this is a zoning component that could be implemented, and Corey's here, so he can probably chime in anytime. That once construction has commenced, then it's expected a site wall in the front needs to be completed by a certain period of time. So those will be zoning requirements that would be attached to the development order. Those are the things that could be done going forward, and I said, Brian and I will talk about this and see what we could do, but from a building standpoint, they're in compliant. Mark is correct, this thing is built like a bunker. It's really, it's solid. So it's very difficult to do anything with a structure like that as far as, very expensive for demolition or removal or so on, anything along those lines.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comments?
I have one, just broadly, and then kind of a specific on it, is that, I think one of the most important things we're trying to achieve here as a group is these homes come before us, and it is the aesthetics of the community, and that's broadly defined, and different opinions have, but I think we all agree that what the front elevation and the front landscaping looks like is real important to the character of Ocean Ridge. And I'd like for us to kind of go back and take a look at some of the things in our design guidelines that have given us trouble in the past, and specifically, and I've heard Mark Marsh comment on this before, some of these houses will come in with what you refer to as punched windows. So creating an elevation that is pretty flat with some windows, maybe dressed up with a shutter or two on each of them. And they must meet compliance with our design guidelines, but they are creating homes that aren't architecturally very exciting. They seem much more like a home that a tract builder would build than the type of homes that some of our better architects are doing. So that's just one of the things that specific guideline and how much glass and windows are allowed. I'd like to see us take a look at. Mark, do you have anything you can add to that? Because you're much better at this design.
Well, let's get into the process here, and I think we'll discuss it.
Okay.
Good. And one of the
Not,
ideas,
excuse me, I am not commenting on today's house. So that was a comment in general, not about today's particular home.
No, I think, in follow-up to you, I think the concern is real, that we're getting cookie cutter product now in the town that I think is a really, understated, diluted type of architecture, which I think is going to come back and haunt us in the future. Just, we've all said or repeated things like, oh, look what they built in the 60s. A little ranch house, no detail, simple little hip roof or gable roof, and, what were they thinking? Well, I see us at that crossroads now, personally.
And these houses are maximizing the lots in most cases, so they're a lot more mass and
Well, the scale is-
on a scale, and often are, a large home next to a home that was built 40, 50 years ago that's a smaller scale, and
No, I think those are all good points, which I
Yes.
think we have to.
And one point that I'd like to add is, in the past, we've discussed that in time, and maybe the time is now, to have a workshop and to discuss what are the parameters. And as Commissioner Hurlbert has pointed out, it's a delicate balance between, on one hand, having a diverse community and not being dictators, and on the other hand, having some common sense, good taste imposed on new construction. So
Is-
maybe we ought to consider that. Tracy?
You took the words out of my mouth. When I raised my hand, that's what I was going to say. Would you like staff to begin the process of scheduling a workshop regarding design guidelines between you and the town commission?
Yes.
Yes.
that'd be great.
We have consensus?
Good.
Yeah, I think it was minuted last
Yes.
meeting.
Because we're changing the character of the town, one house at a time, and, and that's, we want to do it in a way that fits what the commission and this planning and zoning feels is good for the character going forward.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Good. Any other comments? Good. Let's move on to the next order of business, which is approval of the October 21st, 2019 minutes. Any comments regarding the minutes?
It was a nice short meeting.
Yes,
I make a
8:36
motion to
departure.
approve.
I second.
All in favor of approval?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Good, unanimously approved. I'd like to now open the, since we're down to the development plan review process, I'd like to open the meeting as a quasi-judicial hearing and ask the town attorney to call for any ex parte communications.
Does any members have any ex parte communication regarding 2 Coconut Lane?
No.
None? Okay, none, thank you.
Town clerk swearing any witnesses or people who will be making public comments?
All those who wish to speak, please stand. Okay, do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All righty, you may have a seat.
Okay. Staff report, please.
Mr. Chair, thank you. What we have before you is a proposed development at 2 Coconut Lane. It previously had a small 2-bedroom ranch on it, which has been demolished in preparation for the new home that you see before you. This new home will consist of 4 bedrooms, 4.5 bath, a cabana bathroom, and a 3-car garage, with a raised elevation of 7 NAVD. At the time, it appears that all the zoning requirements as presented have been met. The only thing that I wanted to make mention of, which wasn't quite clear, was that the screening in front, where they proposed a wall, just want to make sure that that's fully addressed, and it will be addressed in the building permit process. Barring that, the applicant is here, and he'll make the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Wayne.
you.
Carla. Good morning, happy holidays. My name is Richard Jones with Richard Jones Architecture in Delray Beach. I'm happy to be presenting 2 Coconut Lane here this morning. Coconut Lane is a very unique and eclectic street. There's a variety of architectural styles on Coconut Lane. The 2 homes immediately adjacent and to the west of this lot are a Mediterranean-style home that was built approximately 14 years ago. And to the west of that is a West Indies-style home that was built at the same time by the same builder. I'm happy to say here today that this is a custom home. It's not a speculative home. There are homeowners, property owners, Craig and Lori Herkert. They've been traveling to Ocean Ridge for many years, and they are excited to now make 2 Coconut Lane their residence. And so we're here to propose a 2-story coastal contemporary home that has a very appealing massing. The front setback is measured from the garage, which puts the majority of the home significantly set back from the street, again, which lends itself to the diversity and uniqueness of Coconut Lane. I'm going to try out the new technology here that Carla has given me. And we have our site location. It's the first lot on your south side as you pull into Coconut Lane. If you look on the aerial, you'll see that the 2 homes that I had mentioned immediately to the west and then across the street is an empty lot and also a newer home that was built in a West Indies or Key West style. This is our site plan. Wayne had mentioned we do have a wall and gates across the front. That'll be addressed at time of permit. It's a side-load garage, so none of the garage doors actually face the street. There's ample parking for the 4 bedrooms, and it's a modest 4,346 square feet of air-conditioned space, again with generous setbacks to the main structure, especially to the rear of the property. We have our civil engineering plans to ensure that drainage is adequately addressed, and drainage has been a problem on Coconut Lane. But this shows you the amount of open space and where the proposed septic field will be. Our ground floor, open plan, great room, kitchen, dining, as well as master suite and exterior entertaining area along with the 3-car garage. Second floor has 3 bedrooms, 3 baths, plus a bonus room at the top of the stairs. Our elevations, again, we're using metal roof. It's has a cantilevered front balcony on the 2nd floor, which provides cover at the entry door. And we're utilizing parapets as part of the design. And our rear elevations, where we eliminated the muttons. And as I speak, I'm reminded of something that Mark had mentioned the last time I was here, that on previous houses, we've had a little detail at the top of the glass. We'll see if we still have to provide that, but that's easily something that we could add on the rear. And these are our renderings. This is from the rear, showing the backyard, the loggia, and the master suite. This is the other side to the west. Again, essentially having our home rear yard facing southeast to take advantage of the prevailing winds. Again, this is that rear yard facing the southeast, and plenty of green space, landscaping right up to the pool. And we go back to our front elevation. And again, the characteristics are the white stucco, the parapets, the bronze windows and roof. And again, it's a very traditional massing. This house could take on any architectural style as far as the massing that's shown. But our client is in love with the coastal contemporary style that we have been designing in other municipalities along the coast here. And so we're happy to answer any questions that you might have, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Commissioners, any questions of the applicant?
I have a couple. Wayne, does our parking, like garage and everything, meet for a 5-bedroom? Even
Yes,
though it's
yes.
listed, it does?
Good, yeah.
Okay, good, so if that bonus
do,
room
yes,
is
for sure.
used as a
Correct.
bedroom.
We have a
Excellent.
3-car plus the extra space, and we have more than enough space in that courtyard.
And then I think you mentioned something before, when we were talking about the tract homes and everything. This is very similar to a home you've designed on Old Ocean, correct?
A home that we designed on Old Ocean is somewhat similar, but that application has been removed from, and our office is no longer involved with that. And so since that design was not going to be realized, we have utilized that style, similar style, for this particular home. I believe this is the only coastal contemporary home that we're proposing in Ocean Ridge. Others that we've gotten approved that are moving forward are more of a transitional contemporary with a different look. But this is the only one that we're proposing currently that has the parapets and the metal roof.
Richard, morning.
Good morning.
Help us understand this coastal contemporary.
Yes.
Because it's important to what Rick had said earlier. I think we're at this crossroads within design, in the design world. What makes this coastal contemporary?
Well, the contemporary nature of the house is the fact that you see certain details that are distinctive to contemporary homes. Glass garage doors. You wouldn't necessarily see those on a Mediterranean-style home or a West Indies-style home. The railings themselves are a horizontal, simple horizontal railing, as you can see on the front porch. Horizontal railings, again, are a detail that is consistent with contemporary homes. You wouldn't necessarily see horizontal railing on a West Indies home or a Mediterranean-style home. The expanses of glazing that you see across the rear of the home in this rendering here, significant amount of glazing, minimal amount of muntins, if you will, the divided lights on the windows. That is also another signature of contemporary style. We do have the muntins on the front of the house, and for that reason, we also are cognizant of the neighbors and the eclectic styles that are on the street. So we've added muntins to the front to kind of respect that traditional aspect of design. But the real signature of this is not necessarily a coastal contemporary detail, but it's the parapets that you see. Is this a pointer also, Carla?
It might be,
Let's try it out. Well, I might have to do the old low-tech method. You see the parapets to the left and the right at the entry. There's also parapets on either side of the main structure. The parapets, again, are kind of a tie back to a more traditional architecture. You see this particular style quite often on the island up in Vero Beach and some of the communities north of the downtown. Windsor, Polo, if you will, Old Orchid, and some of those communities. And so it's a very clean style, and hence the simplicity of it and the clean details with the glass garage doors and the expansive glass. We've given it the term of coastal contemporary. We have designed a few other homes in this particular style. It's very popular, but we're very conscious not to propose too many of these style homes for the concerns that you have all brought forward. So again, this would be the first one that our firm has designed here in Ocean Ridge, and we don't have any more proposed at this time. This is our only house that we have in the queue.
Now, the reason I ask is I do respect you as an architect in terms of what you've done in Delray, you know. But the concern I have, and I think this is done reasonably. I think the balance is great, you know, the form is great. It kind of bothers me, and again, unfortunately, I'm trained in this. You've got all these gable ends, as you call them, parapets, which are pediment elements, and then you throw in the middle a hip roof. Again, whether it's right or wrong, I'm just pointing out or asking why are we doing this? It looks like it's just right in the center of that building, you've just kind of changed the whole concept of, it's either you've got too many parapet walls, as you call them, or not enough. You know, you're just kind of mixing things here, which is a little bit concerning. The simplicity I understand with the contemporary element. I just think, you know, I have no idea what those shutters are doing because they're below a window on the two prominent pediment ends of the gable ends of the building. You know, if you're going to use shutters, they need to represent a purpose. Having them down below the transom really is kind of a strange thing, and I'm not picking on it. I'm just, you know, concerned. I understand, and going back to the simplicity, but again, you know, we're transitioning into almost a commercial venture here. Is this the same developer that built at the end of Hudson?
No, it's not.
Okay.
No, it's not. And if I could address your comments about the shutters, behind those 4 Bahama shutters that you see there on the front elevation are windows. They're tall windows. They go to the floor. On one side, we have a master bath to the left. And so we are using, again, a Bahama shutter that is a more traditional detail. And we're using it to cover a full height window, both to the left in the master bath, but we also have windows in the garage. We thought there'd be a nice symmetry between the two. We do have a formula to answer your question about not enough or too many parapets. We try to limit the amount of parapets to 2 maximum per elevation. That's why you only see 2 essentially facing the front. If you go to the east elevation, you'll see 2 also. There's a small one there to the left, and then the main parapet of the main structure of the house. And to the west, there's only 1. And if we rotate around, there you see the 2. And then to the west, there's only 1. And to the east, there's 2. And to the north, there's 2. So we tried to evenly distribute the parapets and no more than 2 per elevation because they are an accent detail. They bring attention to the steeper pitched roof, which is also another detail found in coastal contemporary architecture. And so
Let me go back. No, I don't mean to cut you, just because we don't want to belabor. Going back to the Bahamian projected shutters. Is the reason, I mean, those windows are 10 foot high,
Yes.
which again, can you go back to the front, please?
The rendering?
You can see you're on the cusp of a proportional issue with the fenestration versus the, the face of that parapet or pediment. And again, scale is so important when you do, things like this. And I think that is telling you that those windows are too high, proportionate to the space that they're in or the facade that they're installed on. So again, it's just, you're, as I said, you're a good architect and I respect you, but, and I'm only pointing this out for our board members because you can do it to a point where it's a good result. But we have people that attempt this that really miss the target so badly that we will pay the price in the town later on. So I'm not picking, I'm just trying to point out certain elements, and I'm sorry I'm using you as an example, but I'd be interested to hear some of the other board members' comments. But again, my concern is this coastal, which has a very catchy connotation to it. I think it's clever. It just needs to be done, and that's what, like West Indies, is very eclectic.
Yes.
But the composition and proportion is really consistent. Here we could venture, because we're expanding or extending certain elements, especially the fenestration. I think you're getting into a kind of a uneasy, uncomfortable proportion.
Well,
I think, to your point, I do suggest we do transoms on the back rear fenestration
Yes.
to interrupt that 10 foot of glass. So I have to be consistent there.
Yeah.
But I'll let other members make any comments if there are any.
Other commissioner comments, questions?
I've got some. To Mark's point, the windows that are on the end of the garage and on that, the left as we look at it, are they the same height as the windows in the main body of the house?
Yes, they are.
So that might be consistent to my thinking. I'm not an architect, obviously. And now continuing to look at the garage, you've got, is that a vent above the wall, or is that a skylight?
It's just a louver. It's a recessed louver, just to bring an extra detail to the parapet so it's not so stark and to warm it up, if you will.
Okay, is there storage space above the garage?
I do
didn't
not believe
re-
so.
Okay,
I'd have to
so I
check.
mean, that'd be a really high ceilinged garage.
Yes, the garage, I don't see this, let me see if I can get to the plan here.
It's about 12 feet.
12 feet.
So that would, they're not planning on doing stacked parking in there, are they?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No.
Can I continue with questions?
Oh, please.
Okay. I would think for a good number of the adjacent neighbors, drainage is a critical question.
Correct.
And before I go any further, I personally like the look of the house. I think your package was really well done.
Thank you.
But drainage, you say it's been adequately addressed. It seems to me this is a big deal because I can see a few people that live nearby, and I'm sure they're concerned about it.
Well, again, our drainage is designed by Joe Pike with Enviro Design, who has designed a lot of the drainage plans for homes in Ocean Ridge. One thing that we're doing is we're being consistent with our grades across the front of the house to our neighbors. If you could see on the engineering plan, our grades as we enter the property are in the 3s and 4s NAVD, which is consistent with the neighbors as well. And the house itself at 7 per the new codes and the new FEMA regulations. Every house that we propose has civil engineering design adequate to maintain per code, all of on-site drainage. So there'll be no drainage from this property going out into the street or across to other properties.
Okay.
I can't say that for a fact on the existing design, the existing house that's there.
Right.
The one-story home that is on the lower lying lot. But this one will maintain all of its runoff and not contribute to any problems that may already exist in the right-of-way. And anytime you have new development where there is drainage issues in the right-of-way, certainly a proper design would ease some of that issue.
Along those same lines, the roofs are interesting to me. I kind of like them. I note, though, there's no gutters, and that would probably change the look of the house a lot, but gutters do help move water away from the immediate area of the home, and could affect some of your drainage. Are gutters no longer something we consider in homes anymore?
Gutters, certainly they are a nice detail that can enhance the design if done correctly.
And move water?
And route water to the proper location. In this particular design, there are no gutters proposed, but we do have 15-foot setbacks and exfiltration in our setbacks. And if you can look at the rear elevation here with the amount of green space that you have, there's significant opportunity for percolation of the roof water into the ground and to the exfiltration trenches.
And along those lines, the pool setback from the property line is 5 feet?
The pool setback is 10 feet from, let's see. It says 7? I'm looking at the site plan that I have.
I saw 7, our town building person, Wayne, said it was 5, and it doesn't bother me too much, but the question is, behind the house is an alley, and there's a proposal there for a retaining wall as needed, and I'm just curious about all that. Once again, I like what you've done.
Oh, thank you.
But I'm just asking questions.
We have, the proposed site plan, and that's the site plan that's up on the screen right now shows, I believe it shows 10 feet. So if
One page,
Is that-
yeah.
To the water.
To the wall. Yeah, 7 foot, that's right. 7 foot 6. Yeah, 10, yeah, but I got 7, 6, but you're up to 5 feet is the maximum.
Yes, we are. Thanks, Wayne.
Yeah.
My glasses aren't strong enough, I guess, this morning, but it is 7 foot 6 inches. It looks like 10 to me, but 7 foot 6, and 5 is the minimum. And yes, there is an unimproved alley, I guess, to the rear, which is also a great buffer to the neighbors to the south. But we'll have adequate space for landscaping.
Okay, you've answered my questions, thank you.
I have a few.
Yes, Rick.
Richard, good morning.
Good morning, Rick.
Thank you for such a complete package. It's always a pleasure when you have an application, and it includes the details such as where the septic field is going to be and the drawings that we get here, and I appreciate that. Is there going to be a generator for this house?
Yes, there's a generator location highlighted. It's
Okay,
To
I
the-
missed that. That's all.
It's to the
Whether-
west of the garage.
Okay, good. As long as it's, and this is a comment more to staff, is I think if any house comes here without a generator, we should include on the site plan where the generator is going to go and make sure the window locations and some of the other things that we've talked about in the generator code are addressed going in, because whether it gets built with a generator, it will likely eventually have a generator. Let's plan that in. So thanks for planning it ahead. the elevation of NAVD 7, the homes elsewhere on the street, what would they be currently relative to that? Wayne, do you have I know they go different times, but are they 1 foot, 2 foot, 5 foot less than, how much?
For the most part, it's only the older homes will be at a lower elevation. They're pretty consistent. Maybe around 6.
They're around 6. So the differential between the floor elevation of this and the neighbors is no more than 12, 18 inches. But then on top of that, we have a parapet here that goes to 36 feet, is that correct? So it's, I'm a bit concerned about, I think it's the west elevation, if I can find it here.
I think we have a maximum of 35 feet to the top of the parapet itself.
One of your drawings here,
Yes.
the
Is,
A 3.1, which has the north and west elevations, that shows 36 to the top of the parapet. Wayne, is that, I thought 35 was our limit.
Yeah.
Is it 35 or 36 one? Because that's something that could easily be
Yeah,
adjusted.
You'll deal with, if it's
Exactly.
35 and you're
It'll be
36,
35.
you'll adjust, I understand.
Yes, absolutely.
The west elevation, which is to what the neighbor sees, is a pretty plain but massive side of the building. Is there anything more that, can be done to, I mean, I know some will be addressed with landscaping and stuff, but if I were the neighbor that looked at this west elevation, I'd be,
To the
it'd be,
west.
that, you can see it in that, right there, it's,
One thing that's interesting about the neighbor's house to the west at 4 Coconut, that house has an orientation to the southwest. Essentially, this house with a similar massing is a mirror image of the orientation of that house. We have our second story here shown to the west and our orientation to the southeast, whereas 4 Coconut has their orientation to the southwest. So that, and I've had the pleasure of being in the house on a few occasions, and the backyard, and one of the reasons why we oriented the house this way versus the other direction was that you can have the privacy between the two houses. We can add some additional fenestration if need be to the second floor. You'll notice the majority of the second floor, the majority of the house along the west is only 1 story, which is good. There's only a portion, maybe about 30% of the entire elevation is 2-story, where our stair is and our large window. But I just want to look at my second floor plan here. There is a bathroom in that area that you're, I think, referring to, we can add a window to increase the amount of fenestration on that second floor.
And I'm not going to sit here and suggest I know how to design it for you. I just think about that we often pay attention to our front elevations only and ignore that these are pretty massive houses we're putting in with 2-story. Fortunately, you're next door to 2-story there on that side, so that's good, but you're still, second stories are going to look out their windows at the second story of the other house, and I think we need to, in this and future designs, be aware that, especially where we have these large masses, that we have something that breaks it up some. So that, I think that's all the comments I have. Some of the others I had, the other commissioners have brought up, and I think, again, you do a nice job, and I appreciate you coming before us and taking time to answer our questions.
Oh, thank you. And you know, listening earlier, I applaud the board here for recommending design guidelines be explored. In the beach property owner area of Delray, along the coast, we have a book of guidelines that we need to follow. There are certain particular styles that are allowed. Each style is detailed and listed of the characteristics of that particular style. And then once the design is proposed, it goes to a third-party architect for review that the town has hired to ensure that it is architecturally correct, if you will. And so I think that would be a great idea for Ocean Ridge as well. Thank you.
Other commissioner comments, questions? Let's take this opportunity to just quickly better explore our function and the implementation of that function. For example, it was brought up, I believe by Mark Marsh, adding transoms or a transom to the rear windows. Now, is that meant to be a comment that would be a condition of our approval or rejection resolution?
I think
Or
it's
is it
a
just-
suggestion, again, and this is just me, unfortunately, the height of these windows and doors are extremely high, 10 foot. I keep reflecting on that door there, which is 10 foot. Or that's a little lower, sorry. But these are very tall elements, and to have uninterrupted, you know, I think, as Richard said, he's trying to pick up some residential character and scale. And I think you've gone past that on those particular items.
Those 4 windows with the transoms that you see, they could be lowered, yes. That would be acceptable as a condition of approval. We could drop those down another foot. The muttons on the rear windows was just something that I had brought up that Mark had mentioned at our last meeting, and we're happy to add those as well as a condition of approval, as well as address the extra window that Rick brought up maybe on that west elevation, and any maximum height that we need to comply with.
The maximum height is 36.
Okay,
This
so
is
we do
confirmed,
comply with
so
that.
we're okay.
And it's important to note that's 36 to the very, very top of the parapet. The second floor eave is much lower and consistent with the adjacent properties that are 2-story. And so it's just that one point is 36. You get, at an 812 pitch, you get 1 foot away from the top of your parapet, you're automatically 8 inches lower. You go 2 feet away, you're 16 inches lower. So it's just that 1 point at the very top that we're at 36.
I just want to make sure we're not making exceptions to our codes, because it'll be the next guy that will say, well, you did it for Richard Jones.
The code is 36.
The code is
The
36.
code is 36.
Thank you.
So I see Corey O'Gorman is here. Corey, have you reviewed these plans? Yes. Is that part of your function?
Yes.
And is your input given to Wayne, who in turn gives us the input of all the staff? Is that
Yes, sir.
how this is working?
That's
Okay,
correct.
good. Okay. Now, in our discussions, it would seem to me that we have either recommendations for Richard to consider, or any architect or applicant on one hand, and we have conditions of approval. So we need to be kind of thoughtful as to which it is, and make sure that it's clear that we're either suggesting or mandating. Do we agree on that as?
Yeah, I think
as a
you need
function
to,
of this
he
board?
needs to, obviously, in fairness, have clear direction from the board and the commission.
I think we're used to making suggestions from our
Yes.
past, and Richard's always been good about incorporating those suggestions. But unless we create conditions that he can take back to his client and say, this is what I was directed to do, we can't be assured that changes be made.
Indeed. That's why I bring it up. And then, Brian, do we do the conditions as we're discussing, or when we're making the resolution, the motion?
It has to be part of the motion.
Part of the motion.
It does. I mean, it sounds like you've got 3 or 4 good conditions right there that would be part of the motion when it's made.
Okay. And so, before we turn it over to the public for comment, can we summarize the conditions that we've discussed here so that the public knows the direction that we're heading in? Would that be helpful, do you think? Okay, so one, I heard Mark, was the transom condition suggestion. What, condition?
Correct.
It's a condition,
Yes.
I think they all are,
okay.
right?
Hmm?
I think they all are, right? Because I think Mr. Jones has said,
It's agreed to.
he's already agreed to it.
I could
so-
summarize if you'd like.
Yeah, would you please?
Yes.
That would be very
The
helpful.
conditions would be on the north elevation, that the transom windows at the master bath and garage be dropped from a height of 10 feet to 9 feet. A second condition would be on the south elevation, that the incorporation of muttons at the top 18 inches of all the glazing to tie in with the muttons that are proposed on the remainder of the house. And then, as Mr. Carey mentioned, on the west elevation, second floor, to add some additional fenestration in the area that's currently stucco. And you can see that on the two-dimensional better. And this works on walls, but not on the screen. To the left of the large stair window. Those are the 3 that I believe were discussed, since we are conforming with the height.
Good, okay, excellent. Then, with that, unless there are any other commission comments or questions, I'll turn it over to the audience for their comments or questions. Yes, Martin?
Good morning. Martin Wischolek, 5 Engel Drive. I think, was it Rick or David? One of you brought up the issue of gutters. And I think this is something that really is important on this house. When you look at the landscaping, I see this at my own house, where I have both gutters and I have parts of the roof that do not have gutters. The parts of the roof where there's no gutters, the water drips off in heavy rainstorm. The water drips off and goes into the landscaping. And if there's grass or anything of that nature, it gets destroyed. It just washes out. You have one area where this where one roof basically dumps the water off onto another roof, which then runs off. So you have basically 2 roofs. You have an added mass of water that comes down this way, and it's going to destroy whatever is in that particular area, especially on the west side of the building that has really no aesthetic function, so to say. There should be gutters. Wayne and Lisa, when I did my renovations, had a fantastic, when we did our outside renovations, had a fantastic idea by catching this water, putting it into pipes that are underground, and that basically catch the water and disperse it over time through percolation. This is something that should be considered there, because we have heavy rainstorms, we have extremely heavy rainstorms, and they, whatever is there, either the landscaping gets destroyed and then it starts washing off. it makes no sense not to have gutters on the west side and on the east side for that matter on this particular property. If you want to keep them off the front of the building for looks, that's one thing. The other thing that I want to mention is on the front elevation, the north elevation, those Bahamian shutters, before you make that decision that you're going to 9 foot instead of the 10 foot, I would want to see a rendering of that because it might destroy the entire symmetric view of this house by just dropping it down, because it's going to be inconsistent with the rest of the windows that are on the main building. Just as a suggestion.
Thank you, Martin.
Just to that point, and I think admitted by or presented by Mr. Jones, those are the subordinate areas of the house.
Yes.
So that's my point, is you're not trying to make those a garage, complement the rest of the house necessarily. It's intended, I assume.
It's secondary to the main
Right.
structure, so it's acceptable to drop them down.
Good. Other public comments? Neil?
I didn't put my hand up during the original swearing of
We need you to,
truthful statements, but
we need you to be
I
sworn
will do
in.
that.
We do need you to be sworn in.
Okay.
Who does the swearing?
If there's anybody else who's going to speak, if they want to be sworn in too.
Yeah. Okay, do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, and all the truth?
I do.
Okay.
Neil Hennigan, 91 Island Drive. Reflecting the drawing that shows where the septic system is going and the paved, facing the road driveway, could we have some discussion as to placement of landscaping and shade trees, please? From Mr. Jones. The renderings, I'm just seeing 2 palm trees in the front of the house, and that's the only
Good.
large
questions.
trees.
Good comment, good question.
Thank you.
There's a landscape.
I thought I saw some gumbo windows and some shade trees, because I remember looking for that specifically.
Richard, yeah, please, if you'd like to address Mr. Hennigan's comments, please.
I believe you have a landscape plan as part of your package. It shows 2 large trees at the front flank in the driveway. It shows some other trees also across the front of the house and other landscaping. It's noted that the drain field would be behind the proposed garden wall that's across the front of the house. And the garden wall itself would have landscaping to the north. And so, again, our landscape architect is not here with PK, but we've done a significant number of home designs with their firm in this market, and I trust their judgment that they're meeting the landscape code here in Ocean Ridge and likely exceeding it for screening.
Good. Thank you.
While Richard's up, can you address Martin's suggestion about gutters on the two side elevations?
Yes, we understand about the gutters. Gutters, they do have a function. They do help to divert water. They do also have a significant impact to the style of the home. Would it be great to have copper gutters on the one-story portions? Yes, it would be, but does that tie into the contemporary nature of the design? Or is allowing the water to run off the roof to the landscape areas sufficient, since we do have 15-foot side setbacks and where other municipalities are less? And we do have our exfiltration that the gentleman had mentioned, the water underground. We do have exfiltration designed in on the civil plans, so that any water that does run off will eventually make it underground. I just feel like the gutters would maybe not go very well with this architectural style. That's the only concern.
And I think that might be a good topic for the workshop. So,
I just, to your, and I'm not, gutters are, that's probably above my pay grade, but I can speak to my own home. We resided in it for over 20 years before we finally put gutters in, and we did that because we had rainwater coming off as described by Martin, and it ended up creating subsidence under the slab, which is supported on pilings, and that created a whole additional group of issues for us. So I didn't research enough to see where your pilings are on this, but I suppose you have them.
Yes.
And, I mean, water will get under there and create subsidence, and you have wildlife under there, but if it's a look, it's a look.
Yeah, and again, if gutters are something that, per the code, need to be included, I believe the gentleman's talking about the one-story area that you see here that's to the east along the master wing. And then you see it there along the east side. And then at least the one-story areas to the west as well. We wouldn't necessarily want them on the front or the rear of the house. The owner has wanted to have this clean contemporary look, so those areas would not necessarily be seen. There'd probably be landscaping would block those out. So if that's something that you feel that in your code is required, then they could be added, yes.
thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
I see we have one other member of the audience who'd like to comment or ask a question.
Morning. Paul Pantozzi, 17 Coconut Lane. Mine is more of a mundane type of an issue. As this project gets underway and the foundation comes out of the ground, there are going to be many, many contractors on site. And I was wondering what type of accommodations that might be made for parking of all the vehicles that are going to show up. Secondarily, when deliveries are made, there are rather large tractor-type vehicles that come on site. And how will that be managed from a directional standpoint? I mean, this clearly affects everybody that lives on the street in terms of ingress and egress.
Wayne, please.
Prior to the building permit being issued, the applicant, and I've met with the contractor, already I've installed rock on the front of the property to mitigate the traffic that's going to go in and out, also bringing mud onto the roadway. Parking needs to be on the property. Because of the narrowness of that street, there's no parking allowed on the street. So all construction needs to be maintained on the property, and the contractor is going to be told at the pre-con meeting again. So as far as deliveries go, I'm anticipating, and you're correct, trucks will go all the way down to the end, use the cul-de-sac and make that U-turn and come back out. We'll have to monitor that and as the site goes, but because of the narrowness of the street, you are correct. It's going to be a tricky site.
Thank you. If there are no other questions or comments, I'll close the quasi-judicial portion of this hearing and turn it back over to the commission for a motion of approval with conditions or without conditions, or a recommendation of disapproval. May I have the motion, please? Motion of approval?
I make a motion for approval, and that motion would be conditioned on the north elevation windows and doors being reduced to a 9-foot height, and the south elevation including transom windows, and the west elevation having added stucco detailing on the second floor.
That would be lowering of 9 feet to the windows on the master bath and garage only.
Only the master bath and garage, not the front windows?
And Mutton's added to the transom in the rear.
And Mutton's added to the transom windows, okay. Amend the, correct the proposal to match what Richard just said.
Is it appropriate, can I ask Richard a question? Is a change in the size of those windows something that you feel your clients will be in agreement with?
Yes, I believe all the conditions are fine. They enhance the design, and they'd be happy to include those in, yes.
Good, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carla, do you have that? Good, okay, great. Right.
You need a second.
Yeah, yes,
Second.
I want to make sure you have it down. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Alan Hoover?
I'm in favor.
Everybody, all in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Richard. Good package.
Thank you.
Good presentation. Thank you. Let's move on to the next order of business, which I understand is the development plan review for Beachway, which has been removed from the agenda. Good, thank you. And then the draft ordinance regarding synthetic turf.
Chairman, one quick question before you move on, and I know, Wayne, that you guys gave us time to look at this form, but the data calculation, can we put a column in there for the hot buttons that are required, like the 36 feet, the 35% pervious area, things like that, because you have the proposed, and then you have your zoning review. But can we put what our code requires?
Sure, I'll put it in parentheses on the form so you have an idea.
Excellent, that would just
Thank
be
you.
helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, very good, okay. That takes us to item number 4, which is a draft ordinance regarding synthetic turf, and turn it over to staff to make their presentation and also elaborate on the supplement that was sent to all of us.
I think Brian, if you want to go first.
Okay. Basically, at your last P and Z meeting, you had directed that we go ahead and take that version of the synthetic turf ordinance to the council, to the town commission for approval. After it left, or after the meeting here, our town planner had some comments on the document, and those comments were good comments, so we thought, no, let's, what we would rather do is to take it in front of the commission and to, just for discussion item, but to show those comments and to talk about them, to kind of get direction from them. In the midst of doing that, the town commission, they reviewed the information and looking at the new comments that we had in there, and then they had kind of recommended, hey, let's go ahead and bring this back to you all to make sure you're okay with it. And then I believe they recommend, I'm not sure if that was, or if it was staff, we just, we thought, no, let's bring it back in front of you for one last look at it, and then it would go to the town commission meeting in January. If you look at some of the highlighted areas there, you will see that I think those are the changes that were proposed, and those are the changes that we have made to the code from the last time that you saw it. So I don't know if you all have any questions or not.
Let me see if I understand what we have in front of us. The proposed ordinance, including the underlined portions and the crossed out portion, is what we agreed to last time, and then the highlighted yellows are the added
Right.
that incorporate what the town commission
Well,
suggestions?
no, it's actually what Corey had suggested, and basically, if you'll look at that, there's a definition section, and then the section on the water efficient landscape code. Those two sections were added into this ordinance because there were changes to those sections that we did not look at before. So those were suggestions where on the definitions for landscaping, if we're going to allow artificial turf and synthetic grass, it was suggested that we modify our landscaping definition to include that. Okay? And likewise, on the water efficient landscape code, where it talks about under turf areas, it says sod shall normally be required, but large turf areas, whatever, not subject, so we remove that, because that might be inconsistent with what we are looking at in this ordinance here. So those were the two big changes, and that's the reason we decided, no, we need to bring this back, because we're actually adding we're making changes to two sections in the code, because the section that we were changing kind of impacted those sections. So that's one big reason why it's coming back to you.
It looks to me like the area that can be turfed has been expanded, which frankly I don't have a problem with, but before we were limiting it to 25% of the side and the backyard, I think, and here it's 25% of the entire yard, but excludes the front yard. Is that how it's?
Well, I didn't mean to, I guess what I was trying to do was not to change what I assumed the direction was at the last meeting. So I'm not trying to expand it, just trying to clarify it, because I think when Corey looked at it, he goes, yeah, and I think this came from him, but it was kind of like, yeah, we may need to clarify that just to make sure that everybody knows what we're looking at here. So if I got that wrong, then that's, I wasn't trying to change the direction from the last meeting, I was just trying to clarify that direction. Which is 25% of the area in the rear and the side yard minus the main building structure. And that's what, that is the maximum area that you would allow synthetic grass to grow, to go into, and it can only go into the side or rear areas, provided it's not seen from the public.
So I'm looking at item C on the last page, and it says this area is defined as the total parcel area defined as a side or rear yard area minus the primary structure. Is that?
Yes.
Okay. So there's really been no change?
No, that's what I'm saying. My intent was not to change anything, just to clarify it.
Oh, okay.
That was because when Corey had read the ordinance as proposed, he had questions. And when we have people like that, like a planner looking at it, we want to make sure there are no questions.
Right.
It's completely clear.
So would you add any of this to the proposed ordinance that we're going to recommend?
Well, I mean, based on, I guess, the other, this is the way, what's proposed in front of you is proposed to go back to the town commission, provided that you all still want to do that based on the other memo that Tracy can talk about that I think staff had also provided you.
So can I clarify, basically it's just the two definition sections that changed in this? That's the only direction that came from the town commission?
Well, it's not so much direction, it was when we went to, it was just a timing thing, because before we had taken or proposed to take the ordinance without these changes to the town commission. And I guess Tracy, correct me if I'm wrong. We got the comments back from Corey like a day or two before the town commission meeting. So we said, okay, he's got some valid comments here. So therefore, rather than going forward with first reading on the ordinance at that point in time, because we're adding new sections and doing things like that, let's just propose, we provided this to them, I believe, didn't we?
Yes, we
okay,
provided it
they're
to the
looking
commission.
exactly at what you're looking at, and I believe they were okay with this, if I'm not mistaken.
And they made comments
Okay.
to us.
All right, and I can't remember were those, I don't know if we've incorporated some of those comments here that they had made. One was the pervious area, was that it?
And there were still questions. That's kind of why
Okay.
we have two separate things going on.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the part I
And there
don't
were
understand,
unanswered
because
questions, yeah.
I thought that the commission questioned things about coming into compliance within 10 years. And,
Yeah, right.
They
I
did.
still support
Yeah.
what we came up with initially, so
Right.
I didn't understand if this was incorporating what they wanted us to look at, but it's not. This is our original, just modified for what Corey thinks needs to happen.
Yeah, because it's really your
There are still
recommendation.
unanswered questions.
Okay,
Okay.
yes, yes.
There are still unanswered questions. There are still concerns. There was a question about a putting green. So if you look at, section 66-142A, and you talk about the pile height, so the 1.5 inches, there was concern there where if somebody wanted a putting green in the back, they wouldn't be able to do it because of the height requirement. So that was one concern there. Another concern, or another comment, I would say, was drainage. So we have a lot of drainage issues in town, and we were talking about how turf does not need to be watered, so it would kind of help the drainage issues in town, so that was another point. And then,
What about in an extreme storm?
In an extreme storm, everything gets wrecked, right?
So is staff recommending that we proceed with the, and recommend or not, with the ordinance before us, suggested ordinance, or wait until you guys do some more homework?
no, I think we're ready to go.
Okay.
But we want to move forward with an ordinance to the town commission in
Okay.
January with any recommendations that this board has.
Okay.
Now, is that
We don't
correct?
want to wait anymore. We want to make sure this goes in January.
Right, but I guess, Tracy, you want to bring up your memo as far as the
Yeah,
alternative?
We had an alternative based on all of the conversations that staff had had and members of the public commenting, and also comments from the town commission. So we kind of just developed this alternative that is in front of you in memo format, just for you to take into consideration. If you like it, then we could go with something like that, that's simpler. If you don't like it, then we don't have to do anything with it. It's just an alternative for you to review.
Is there a suggestion that the town commission might not approve this draft ordinance in this form if we don't
No,
modify it?
no.
And the memo that we got on December 16th, well, no, that's today, and then we got over the weekend, I believe. Are you as staff saying these are your recommendations to include these things?
Not necessarily a recommendation, but just something for you to think about. Staff has been going back and forth on how are we going to enforce these regulations once they're put on the books.
Well,
So what is staff's recommendation?
Let's,
get something done today.
we can dissect this till we're all
Right.
old and decrepit. I think the important thing here, let's get something adopted. I think Corey has looked at it, we've discussed it, staff has done a great job in coming up with issues, but I think I'd like to make a motion that we move this along to town commission for
Second.
All in favor?
Well, you may want to open it up for the public.
Oh, yeah, there's people out there.
I do, and I have a question for Wayne, before we go into public discussion. Wayne, with what we're proposing, the motion on the floor, and somebody comes to you and they want to put a putting green, can you work around, can you make that work, or?
No.
Okay, so that's something that potentially is going to come back up when it goes to the commission.
My concern is, even if we adopt this, is this gonna get adopted by the town commission? I'm ready to go forward too, and I completely agree with everything that we recommended in the
Let
beginning.
me address
But are we
Rick's,
gonna get it done?
Rick's thing. They can come up in front of us at a point if they so desire to have a putting green, and then we'll look at it, where it is located, and grant it.
And that,
We don't have to,
No, that's not how it works, Mark. I'm sorry, I have to disagree with you, because something like this is not going to come before the P and Z. This,
yeah, but that,
We're just-
this is gonna go to the building
or
official.
they, yeah, or,
Yeah.
sorry. But they
Board of
have the
Adjustments.
opportunity to,
Yeah, because the language says it shall have a minimum height. That wording means it has to be that way.
and that's purposely done.
Correct.
But if somebody wants to have a putting green, there is an option, let me back up, sorry. You are correct. There is an opportunity through the town process for somebody, either through Board of Adjustments or even an appeal to the
A variance.
town commission to have that, because it's a unique request. You can't mandate or write those kind of things.
I mean, unless you want to put in some language that says that they shall have 1.5 inches unless otherwise approved by the building official. That's the reason we added that language in after the color of the grass, because the commission, there was a comment at the commission level talking about, well, are we going to have a certain color of grass here? And I have no idea what color is out there that's the standard color, but that can be up to the building official when it comes in to say, okay, this is the standard color that we're using, this is what it is, this is what it has to be.
Something that mimics
So,
sod.
yeah.
Right.
Well, Lisa, maybe you can answer this. There are a number, I would imagine, or Corey, manufacturers of synthetic turf now. And each has a proprietary color. So,
So many colors, you can't even.
I mean, where do we
So
start?
many bottom lines, you can't even imagine.
You have to be in the green spectrum.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
Mimic grass.
Mimic grass, right.
Purple grass.
Not like a Boise
So are you
State football
saying
field.
that if we add that language as approved by the town building official, then we're giving Wayne some latitude to
Yes.
approve
Yes.
a putting green?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
well,
So,
Okay, so,
I
I'm
amend my
okay with
motion
that.
to,
I'm
Okay,
okay with
all right, okay,
okay, let's go with the motion.
yep,
get her done.
okay,
And then
I know.
Yeah, okay, then we can always, in 6 months, if we screw it up,
Revisit.
we can revisit it.
Sure.
Okay,
let's just hope they vote for it.
okay. Motion, please.
Oh, well,
Don't we wanna let
the
these folks
public, if there's anybody that wants to
And-
talk.
You have a right, don't
And I
they?
think you need a second
Okay,
for his
no.
amendment, but anyway, we got
Okay.
to change.
Any
Got the second.
public comments? Just
Just do it.
Okay, motion. Motion.
It's amended with that. clause.
One change,
One
okay.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Done. Okay, last item on the agenda is the adjournment of, not adjournment, but changing around the meeting dates to our meeting for the January 13th and February 10th. Do we need a motion for that, or you just want to do it?
A consensus is fine.
Consensus?
If you're all available on the dates proposed, then we'll just change the dates.
Available.
Hope so.
Good.
Yes.
Okay. and
Everybody
then
good with
One
that?
to 13th?
Yes.
And then the remainder of the year is scheduled on the third Monday?
Yes.
I'm not available on the 13th, I can tell. Of January.
I'm not
Do
either.
we,
We have two missing on the 13th of January. Let's better propose another date.
Well, how about the alternates?
Do we have two missing? Two
We have
alternates?
two alternates, right?
Yeah, can the alternates make those two meetings? Yes. Or the one meeting in January? Yeah.
Jim?
Jim?
Jim, are you available on January 13th to attend a meeting?
Right, okay.
I just have a question before you adjourn, please. Are you going to have any public comments on any other subject that relates to P&Z before you adjourn?
Not P and Z, no. No, we're gonna move right on to our next committee, whatever that is.
We need to move to adjourn?
Okay, so the consensus is, we're going with a January 13th and the February 10th meeting. We'll have the two alternatives for the January 13th meeting.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Okay, so we have one more meeting before us, and that is the meeting regarding the tax district.
Okay, so for that meeting, we need the two alternates to come and sit on the dais because they're part of that committee.
And I regretfully have to go.
I have to go in 5 minutes.
I don't think this takes less than,
So we got a couple of alternates.
We all seven have to be here, though.
Yes.
Let's roll.
Yes, the full the full
Oh,
committee
okay.
with alternates is part of the infrastructure surtax
Got it.
committee.
And you need a motion to accept the report? Is that what we're here to do?
Yeah, let's, hold on one second.
Yeah, I think we
Let's
got it.
have the
Yeah,
alternates come up.
Yeah, good, we'll get it done.
One more chair.
David, did you say you had to leave, or
I'll
are you
stay
still,
if
you're
we
gonna
can
stay?
whip
Okay.
right
We
So
can do it.
I'm
through
gonna
this.
move.
We're gonna do it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Neil,
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 you need
come
to sit
join
here.
This is now the
This-
Jim, somebody come over here.
infrastructure
Sorry,
surtax.
I don't mean to be. It's like, do I smell?
Yes, Mom. Yes, Mom.
It's like, come here, somebody, come here.
Come on, Mom.
I am a mom, I do those things a lot.
I would like to call to order the Town of Ocean Ridge,
Chairs.
Florida Infrastructure Surtax Citizen Oversight Committee meeting. Call to order, a roll call, please.
Member Gray,
Here.
Member Carey,
Here?
Member Hutchins,
Here,
Member Kaczynski,
Here,
Member Marsh,
Here.
Member Hennigan,
Here.
Members Lemming.
Here.
Good. So you all received copy of the minutes, I assume, of the December 10th, 2018 meeting. Any comments, suggestions, changes to that?
Move to approve?
second,
All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Report to the town commission. And the report would be basically to say that we observe that, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong on this one, we observe that the revenue we've got is $342,017 and 19 cents, and that no funds have been spent. Is that correct?
That's correct. According to the Palm Beach County ordinance, the committee shall approve that annual report to submit it to the town commission, detailing what you have received in revenue and then what you have expended, which is zero.
Zero.
And the balance in the fund as of September 30th is 342,17.19.
Okay, and we do not comment on the use of that money as a committee, that we leave that to the commission.
Yes, you can certainly make recommendations for the future if you so choose.
Is that something we can discuss at the workshop?
You can, but you can discuss it right now too. You want to open it up?
No.
but I do want to say, I still would like an answer to the questions that I posed the last time. Is there a date certain by which these monies have to be spent? Because we don't want to lose them, and many of these projects take a lot of preparation and investigation beforehand. And what is a list of possibilities that we could in fact spend this on? So I would still like answers to those things that were in the minutes from last time.
And so far, the money is being held for use for the potential sanitary sewer system.
Depending on what the town commission would like to spend that money on, but yes, that could be a project we could spend the money on, correct?
But it would be great to hear about that.
A move to accept the report?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Done.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
That was easy.
Merry Christmas to all those